Good morning, everybody. It's Dan Basse and Ben Buckner again on August 15th, Friday, on our crop tour. Ben's kind of switched places with me. I'm on a tour, and he's back in Chicago holding down the fort on research. But as we look at the crop, it seems to be very strong. Looking over the numbers last night, record ear and stalk counts, record kernel counts on corn, record pod counts on soybeans. It's a big crop. We'll get more into the central and eastern parts of Illinois today. I think it's a very critical area because if we don't find a sharp decline in yield potential, then the Illinois corn crop will be record large this year. But Ben, give us some ideas of what you're thinking going forward.
Yeah, I think that's right. And what we've done so far is really try to get into things. So we kind of got a new way of I think determining a way to get closer to a good soybean yield estimate. Counting individual pods almost. And yeah, everything has looked good so far, and it's more of the same from us. I'll show you some pictures in a minute, but it is getting into that central Illinois that I think will be important, and that's where people have talked about things not being so good. But I'll let you guys get into it. And again, we swapped because Dan, I think everyone needs to see just how special this crop has been so far. Before the markets, it's been kind of more of the same since the August WASDE. It's soybeans generally adding premium, corn kind of languishing at contract and what are so far seasonal lows. And I think this kind of explains it. Corn and wheat are still kind of stuck near oversold when we look at RSI. And so, again, that only gets fixed with either a pretty sharp correction to the upside or, a couple of weeks of pretty choppy neutral trade. So we're kind of seeing that happen. Another way to reconcile oversold conditions in the case of soybeans, for example, is, again, a very quick recovery to the upside. I think that's what we're seeing today. I do want to communicate that soybeans are not terribly far very suddenly from being overbought. And so we want to be cautious with that, especially with, I think, what we're seeing in the soybean crop. And that is potentially still the surprise to us. It even got better as we got into eastern Iowa and crossed the river and got to western Illinois. So I wanted to show you more or less what we've seen almost the entire trip. And so this is from Hancock County, Illinois. It's, again, right across the Mississippi from Iowa. And you see on the left just a plant that is a yardstick. This field particularly was incredibly difficult to walk through just because of how lush the vegetation was. And on the right, you've got the pods that we pulled from that particular plant. You can see they're numerous. We count 69 pods here. I wanted to show this because we also have visually the ratio of pods that are 3 beans or better or 2 beans or smaller. And on the left, you've got the pile that's 3 beans or better. And so it's about 80% of that total plant was 3 beans or better, the occasional 4 bean pod. And so again, that's what we've seen. That's like you mentioned, Dan, there are a lot of pods out there and a lot of kernels. We've also been trying to get to the bottom as best we can of potential tassel wrap pollination issues. And I'll be totally honest, now we got, I think 38 to 40 stops. We have yet to see it really. And so you'd think we'd see a couple of those, but more or less, this is what we're finding, at least in the state of Iowa and sort of the western maybe quarter of Illinois so far. You can see that these ears could have pollinated more, but they just ran out of room. So it's to the end. You got a solid 7.5, 8 inches of rain. We have seen some 9 and 10-inch ears. So again, everything looks really good. And so what we're doing too is, not just taking the normal, 2 or 3 ear samples, but we're kind of pulling, up to 15 or 20 just to see, can we find a field that did have some kind of issue at pollination? And again, so far where we've been, we haven't found that. So you can pull 20 ears and they all look about like this. So it does seem like in that part of the world, there still is this very special crop brewing. So I think today is going to be important. We have heard a lot, in the marketplace and even looking at weather, the specifics of weather, central, center, east Illinois, where you and the team will be going today. Well, let's get into it. Let's see what exactly is there. But to your point, Dan, I think if it doesn't get pretty bad pretty quick, again, NAS probably pretty close with its Illinois corn yield. Here you've got drought as of July 29th. So let's say what mattered most when USDA started compiling those August numbers. A lot of that's been fixed since with some pretty heavy rain, but you will be going into areas technically that are abnormally dry or in sort of the first stages of drought. So we're very excited to see what you and the team finds today. And also, just we've been pretty active in managing some risk this week. And again, that's why we think, taking trials dollar gets you in. We've been pretty active in and selling forward some things. It's all about soybeans, and soybeans have been clearly a function of short covering this week because of the USDA report, which understandably was not bearish on paper. But I do think that our accounting would put net buying of funds in soybeans at about 40 to 50,000 contracts. So they are probably pretty flat today. So it might be some kind of a gut check for those bullish of soybeans either today or the early part of next week. But our message is still, corn looks very, very good. That's probably dialed in to a large extent in the USDA's forecast. But soybeans, they just look incredible so far. So again, let's see what you find today, but it does have to get bad pretty quick to prevent, I think, another yield hike in September and then again in August or October.
No, I think you're right, Ben. Beans are the stellar performer. As you look at the data, they surprise. There's some bean plants coming out with pod counts of 120, which I've not seen in my 40-year career before. So a really special crop. We'll see how this all plays out. Of course, we need a couple finishing rains across the eastern Midwest, and maybe that's why the bean market's up just a little bit here. But we didn't talk a lot about China today. We'll get to more of that next week. But I think pro farmers going to find a very good crop as they go through the fields next week. Any closing comments?
I don't think so. No, let's get through Pro Farmer, and then we will have wrapped up a good portion of the supply part of the 25, 26 market, and then it is on to tariffs, trade deals, and things. So that is it. Let's stay focused on supply for the next at least a week or so.
Yep. It's all about supply nearby. We'll try to figure out how big is big and where these yields will be in September. Everybody have a good Friday. Good luck in the markets here today. We'll be back on Monday with more crop tour results and then get into the Pro Farmer Tour.
Bye-bye.
Be well, everybody. Bye-bye.